Saints, we've entered that small gate. We've stayed on that narrow way. And we saw in the book of Revelation chapters 4 and 5 that that's the Father in chapter 4, that one sitting on the throne. It's undeniable. And before we move on to the breaking of the seals, we're going to see that even briefly clearer. And we saw in chapter 5 that one sitting on the throne, and he had that scroll with those seals. It was sealed up. And as I said, what the Lord showed me was that is those chosen by the Father, but sealed up. Like in those days, if you had a debt, it would be recorded, rolled, the scroll would be rolled up, and it would be sealed with wax or clay seals. That's what the Father's holding. Those he foreknew, those he predestined, those he chose. They're in that book. But what's written in there is the sin, the penalty, the debt against them for their sins. And then we saw John crying and bawling, it means, because no one was worthy to open the scroll and to break its seals. Now all those on the broad road to destruction, they want to tell you that this is God breaking the seals, bringing hell upon earth, bringing the great tribulation upon the earth. But as we've seen so far, entering that small gate, staying on that narrow way, that this is a revelation of Jesus Christ, and it only gets better. And John's bawling because he knows the saints and the debt against them, that debt, it's sealed up. The price hasn't been paid for that debt against them. And John's bawling. He knows his name is in there. And he's crying, not to bring the tribulation. John wouldn't cry to bring hell upon earth. And then we saw in Revelation 5:6, and I saw in the midst of the throne with the 4 living creatures and the elders, a lamb standing as if slain. The word slain there means freshly slain. And we saw that this is where, in John chapter 10, when Mary's at the tomb looking for him, but he's risen, she sees him and she's clinging to him. She's touching him. She's holding him. And he says, Mary, don't touch me. Don't hold on to me. Don't cling to me. I haven't yet ascended to my Father. I haven't presented this living sacrifice to the Father yet. And in Revelation 5:6, we see where that happened. And I saw in the midst of the throne and the 4 living creatures and the elders, a lamb standing as if freshly slain. This is where he brings his body, that sacrifice, that blood, to the Father, because he has now paid the price. He's paid the debt against them. And what that's going to become is what you see in Revelation 20:15. And if anyone's name was not found written in the book of life, he was thrown into the lake of fire. These are the ones chosen by the Father, but they have death. They have this penalty against them. They're in sin. But the freshly slain lamb rises up, having paid that debt. He has a right to break those seals and release that debt. And it will become. And if anyone's name was not found written in the book of life, this becomes the Lamb's book of life, because he brought life to those that had that debt, that sin, that penalty. And going on even farther, so many on the broad road to destruction try to tell us that that one sitting on the throne was Christ. You saw it couldn't be him, because that freshly slain lamb, which is certainly Christ, rose up right there in the midst of the Father, the elders, the living creatures. And he came to present his body, that living sacrifice, that blood for our forgiveness. And we see that again in Revelation 5:13. And it says, "And every created thing which is in heaven, and on the earth, and under the earth, and on the sea, and all things in them, I heard everything saying, to him who sits on the throne," to that one sitting on the throne, "and to the Lamb. The Lamb, Christ can't be the one sitting on the throne. It's the Father, because it says, to him who sits on the throne and to the Lamb be blessing and honor and glory and dominion forever and forever. Now we're going to go on to the seals. Like I said, those on the broad road to destruction. Now they want to tell you you're going wildly into the tribulation. You're going into death and destruction because the seals are going to be broken. But we've seen in these last few messages, those sins, that scroll is us, chosen by the Father. And what's written in there is the debt, the penalty against us. And he brought his blood. He brought that sacrifice. And he has a right to open that scroll, to release that sin, to release that debt, to cleanse, to wash, to purify, to make perfect those chosen by the Father. And in Revelation chapter 6, and I saw when the Lamb, that he had taken the scroll with the seals from the Father's hand, and I saw when the Lamb broke one of the 7 seals, and I heard one of the 4 living creatures saying, as with a voice of thunder, come. So we have this thundering voice, come. I want to show you something, John. He's taken the scroll. He's going to start breaking the seals. Saints, as we're going to see, this ain't opening the tribulation. It can't. He took that scroll from the Father's hand. He's paid the price for our sins. The 7 seals are him releasing the debt, the penalty against all those chosen by the Father throughout the entire church age. The 7 seals, all but one, and we'll see what happens there because it has to do particularly with the tribulation. The seals have to do with that debt being paid throughout the entire church age. That's what the 7 seals are. Him releasing the debt, the penalty against us, the saints, throughout the church age. And in Revelation 6:2 it says, and I looked, and behold, a white horse, and he who sat upon it had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he went out conquering and to conquer. Those on the broad road to destruction, God bless their little hearts, they've made up some real death and destruction stories. They try to tell you that this is Christ sitting on that white horse, and he's going out to conquer. At the end of the tribulation, he will. But this is not him going out to conquer at the beginning of the tribulation. This is throughout the church age. The conditions that will go on throughout the church age, and as he's breaking those seals, releasing that debt. These aren't a series of events. These are what goes on throughout the church age. And who's on that white horse? Because we saw, when we were doing a previous message, in Revelation 19:11, and I saw heaven opened, and behold, a white horse, and he who sat upon it is called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he judges and wages war. Here we see it's the Lord, and he's identified clearly, and it clearly says that, and in righteousness he judges and wages war in righteousness. The white horse, saints, represents by God's authority. When he returns on that white horse, he's coming by God the Father's authority. When we return with him on those white horses, we're returning by the authority, under the authority of God. The white horse represents the authority of God. And in the seals, the first seal, and I looked and behold a white horse. The white horse is representing the authority of God. And this is covering the entire church age. And he who sat upon it had a bow. It's not in Revelation 19, it clearly identified him as the Lord. Here it's a random he, a male, was sitting on the horse. And he had a bow. And a crown was given to him. And he went out conquering and to conquer. This is not identifying the Lord. This is a he. The one, the man that sat upon the throne, on the horse. He sat upon the white horse. What this is saying, saints, is that throughout the church age, man is going to be going out, and he who sat on it had a bow, war, and a crown was given to him to rule and reign kings and kingdoms throughout the church age. And he went out conquering and to conquer. This, he is man in general. And what the Lord is showing us here, he's breaking these seals. He's releasing that debt. But throughout the entire church age, not a sequence of events, throughout the entire church age, until he returns at the end of the tribulation on that white horse with us, under God's authority, that white horse, man is going to rule and reign upon the earth. And he's going to be causing wars throughout the entire church age. And a crown was given to him. God sets up all rule and authority. And God has given man. Things aren't just randomly happening. God is bringing these things about for his purpose. And he will go out conquering and to conquer. So we see what the Lord, this freshly slain lamb, who's breaking these seals, releasing those chosen by the Father, throughout the church age, that throughout that time, now for over 2,000 years, man is ruling and reigning upon the earth under God's authority. And he is going to go out with a bow, with weapons, conquering and to conquer. Back then it was bows and arrows and spears. Now it's guns and missiles and rockets and tanks. That's what the first seal is. And then in Revelation 6:3, and when he, the freshly slain lamb, broke the second seal. Remember, the seals are covering the entire church age. Through the entire church age, under God's authority, man is going to rule and reign upon the earth through the entire church age and bringing about wars. And he'll go out conquering and to conquer. And when he, the Lamb, broke the second seal, I heard the second living creature saying, "Come." And another, a red horse. So now John sees a red horse went out. And to him who sat on it was granted to take peace from the earth, and that men should slay one another. And a great sword was given to him. So we see in the second seal, we've seen simply, it's true, nobody can deny it, the first seal. Man has ruled and reigned under God's authority upon the earth for over 2,000 years. He's going out conquering and to conquer. And throughout the church age, we see with the results of that. The second seal. And I heard the second living creature say, "Come," and another horse, a red horse, went out. And to him who sat upon it, man, it was granted, not the Lord. The Lord ain't sitting on that horse. It was granted to him who sat on the horse to take peace from the earth. The Lord ain't coming. He is peace. He is righteousness. This is man. And to him who sat upon it, it was granted to take peace from the earth. Of course, as man, under God's authority, is heading out on that white horse with a bow, with a weapon, conquering and to conquer, of course, it was granted to him, granted by God, under God's authority, to take peace from the earth, and that men should slay one another. And a great sword was given to him. And this is what's happened throughout the church age. Man has ruled under God's authority. And they went out conquering throughout the history of the earth all the kingdoms and rulers and kings and presidents. And as they have went out, the result has been wars. And peace is continually taken from the earth. And men have been slaying one another. Look what's going on in Ukraine right now. They're slaying one another. This is all part of the seals. This is all part of the church age. So we see now. We'll see in Revelation 6:5. And when he, the Lamb, broke the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, "Come." And I looked. And I want to tell you something else. I've always said in my messages, these four living creatures stand between God and man, between heaven and earth. That's why they're bringing these first four messages. And when he broke the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, "Come." And I looked, and behold, a black horse, and he who sat upon it had a pair of scales. And I heard, as it were, a voice in the center of the four living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and the wine." So what else is going here throughout the entire church age that we see in the third seal? Certainly because of man conquering and to conquer, and because of the wars, and because of the slaying, we have these food shortages. This is a high price in those days to pay for these things. Throughout the church age, the Lord's shown us, throughout the church age for over 2,000 years, there's been famines, there's been shortages, most often caused by these wars, by these rulers, by these with this great sword. So there has been throughout the church age, these shortages. And then it says, at the end of verse 6, "And do not harm the oil and the wine." Why would it say that? Because throughout the entire church age, oil and wine were something that were in abundance. There weren't shortages of to the rich throughout the entire church age. The rich have always had their riches. If there's too much of a war in this country, they just go to another country. If there's too much over here, too much killing, they move on. They're always protected. They always have their riches. All these people spending all this endless money in Ukraine, but none of those with the money, none of those are down there on the ground fighting, being blown apart. The rich, what this represents, do not harm the oil and the wine. Those were signatures, things that represented the rich of abundance. And he said, don't harm them, because throughout the entire church age, the rich were to continue having their wealth and their money. So we'll go on after this. But remember, the seals cover the entire church age. They are the results of man ruling upon the earth under God's authority. And we're going to see this even more clearly as we go on. Those on the broad road to destruction want to tell you you're deep into the tribulation now. Tribulation, hell upon earth. All these things we just saw have went on throughout the entire church age. They will be worse during the tribulation. They will multiply during the tribulation, because people will be saved by the hundreds of millions during the tribulation, as we've seen in previous messages. At the middle of the tribulation, the Jews will turn to Christ and they will be saved. The tribulation covers, the church age covers the tribulation too, because people can and will be saved during the tribulation. So we'll go on with this in the next message. I'm only able to put on short messages because of my very inexpensive camera and my horrible internet. But we'll go on and finish the seals in the next message. But remember, the seals cover the entire church age. And it is him releasing the penalty, the debt, against those chosen by the Father throughout the entire church age.